Welcome to the Boldly Blind's first podcast. And I'm your host, David Rosenketter, and I myself am blind. And on this first podcast episode, we want to discuss or elaborate a little bit more on what it is to be boldly blind. What is this podcast about anyway that will go along with the blog that I run, www.boldlyblind.blog. Well, many of the topics will be the same, except that we will be discussing them, you hearing my voice, and maybe sometimes someone else's voice that I get to interview. And we can talk about these topics. So what does it mean to be boldly blind? Now, many of you, of course, are blind that will be listening to this podcast, and others may know someone who is blind, or whether it be a student or a client in a rehab or a facility or a agency that helps people who are blind get employed. Maybe you are a teacher or a parent. In any case, we want people who are not blind to know more about our dignity and our capabilities so that the acceptance gap might be narrowed. That way we are all walking in the mainstream, not just seeing our issues versus mainstream issues or our interests as different than mainstream, but especially in those areas where we interact, what we call the public square, shopping, restaurants, ball games, movies, school, even in the home or church. How can we better the interactions between us all? And so, along with discussing things like advocacy as far as legislation, we want to discuss those things that will make us bold, make us confident. Mobility, orientation mobility, canes, guide dogs, assistive devices, wheelchairs, sliding doors, audio signals. Yeah, those are the kind of things that concern us when getting around. And that sometimes the public doesn't always know about or isn't aware how to react. We want to discuss technology, screen readers, JAWS, NVDA, freeware that you could download and it doesn't affect your computer's functionality or a job's intranet system one single bit. Many of the people in the public, employers, co-workers, may not even know this stuff exists. And so it's easy to wonder if a blind person can be in the mainstream workplace. Well, fortunately, there have been rules, there have been provisions to discuss this kind of thing. And there are always ways that are being taken up to make things clearer and more accessible. We can bring in those discussions as well. School. What does it take for someone who is blind to adjust to campus, whether it be a small school, private school, or a state school? I've been myself to mostly smaller private schools, but I know lots of blind people have gone to the larger, 30 to 60,000 student schools and done just fine. So it's a matter of educating those who don't know about those options or what it takes to be a successful student. Well, then how do we go about that? What are the things that you do ahead of time to prepare for that? What scholarships can you get? What adaptations beyond just the note takers and technology do you make? The forms that you might need to sign to get special or what is called special accommodations. What is it like to work with a disabled student services coordinator or a reader? They still use those when I understand at colleges. How do you take notes? All these things are really important. And the more that you can be educated going into these settings or receiving a student who is in this position, the better off we're all going to be as a society. But we can discuss travel. Travel is important. Not only do we travel with family members for vacations, but what are those things that if we're traveling alone, that we can learn about accessibility in an airport or a bus terminal? What can we do to prepare ourselves to speak of our blindness with a sky cap or a ticket agent that doesn't quite know how to respect our needs or doesn't know what our needs may be? It's really easy for people in the public world to think that they see somebody that's disabled in one or more ways and generalize. So, it's like suddenly the parent instinct kicks in, even though that cashier at a restaurant or a sky cap might not themselves be a parent. Okay, so we want to work on being able to how best to handle that. What is it like to go to church blind? It's statistics show that about 95% of the blindness community is unchurched. And a lot of times that seemed to be more out of fear and of the unknown or wondering about myths that blind people have heard about the Christian faith or just organized religion in general. Or what is it like for a pastor in a congregation or a school teacher in a Christian school, Catholic, Lutheran, otherwise school, to suddenly realize that one of those students is blind? What is it like to go into a congregation and nobody knows you? What do? I apologize for my cell phone going off, but these are things that we want to take on, tackle, approach, so that we are able to navigate life's contours boldly blind, whether we ourselves are blind or somebody else is blind. And speaking of that iPhone that has talked at me, we want to talk about technology. We want to share episodes of technology. So, till next time, continue navigating life's contours, boldly blind, confidently.